get rolling here, folks. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I know folks are busy midsummer travel. Hopefully, you're protecting yourself out there from all those sun rays that you may be collecting. My name's Jeff Craddy, and it's my privilege to be hosting the session today, Securing Microsoft M365 Against Business Email Compromise. Before we get started and doing a round of introductions, I'd like to seed with the audience here some compelling information or data points out there that we're aware of. In 2019, Gartner predicted that business email compromise attacks would increase by 100% by 2020. Their estimates were far too low. The FBI reported $2.7 billion in losses, with almost 22,000 business email compromise complaints filed in 2022. A year later, they observed 156,000 business email compromise attacks per day. Crazy. So with that, I'd like to do a little round of intros here. If you don't mind, let folks on the audience know who you are and what you do here at Blue Mantis. Mr. Jay Martin, would you like to start?
Hi, I'm Jay Martin. I'm VP of Cybersecurity and Risk Advisory Team. Nice to meet y'all, and thanks for all coming.
Yep, and I'm Randy Becker. I work on our offensive security team, so we do penetration testing, vulnerability, cloud security assessments. That's me, Kyle.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kyle Sierra. I do a lot of the Microsoft cloud security here at Blue Mantis, so anything from security assessments and remediation to incident response to business email compromise, phishing simulation exercises, a lot of all that good stuff.
So Randy's the attacker, and Kyle is on the defense side. So I like two sides of a great coin there to help our customers sift through this mayhem.
Mayhem is an appropriate term, and I know you. Unfortunately, you gentlemen have been extremely busy over the past several quarters, and so thank you to each of you for making time today. Let's kick it off. Let's help inform a point of view on essentially the state of affairs in the world. Something that started out innocuous a few years ago, maybe sort of fringe, somebody heard about it. But the truth is, you guys are busy all day, every day, dealing with this. Like, what's it like out there right now?
Well, I'll start us off. I'll tell you, we've seen a massive increase. At least I have. I've been doing incident response for, I don't know, about 6 years now, and the increase has been exponential for us, right, Jeff? And the level at which these bad actors try to gain a foothold into environments, especially, particularly business email compromise, and the fraud we've been seeing because of it, with people clicking on links or somebody sending a convincing email to entice someone to modify an account number and send funds in a different direction than they were meant to, has absolutely, it's staggering, right? And so when we first get on a phone with the customer, it's scary, right? And we're trying to figure out what's happening. We're working, behind a veil until we can break through that veil and bring guys like, Kyle and Randy in to really figure out what's going on. But, when customers first interact, encounter a business email compromise, phishing something they did click on, made a mistake, and see the results of that, it's frightening, right? So I won't mince words there. Randy, you want to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so from our perspective, we're often helping customers to test their security controls and their employees to see how they respond and react. And so, we get sort of firsthand visibility into what's going on from that perspective, but also help to, hopefully remediate some of those before something bad happens. But I would say that I keep on saying that the threat landscape continues to evolve and change and get more and more aggressive around what's happening. And the threat actors will adapt to this as customers start to implement better and better security controls. They look for new ways in which that they can abuse that and take advantage of it. And one of the things I like to tell customers, this is a pretty common thing, is that the threat actors are going for the easiest way to get in. And the easiest way to get in almost all cases, is to just log in. So user ID and password. And given the large number of breaches that we hear about, that those credentials become available to everyone. They're disclosed, and then people take advantage of them. And then the follow on to that is then often using either those credentials or some form of those credentials and performing some mechanism, either password spraying, credential stuffing, etc., to then attack locations that the customers have a presence. One of those big ones is obviously Microsoft. It's a big target. And so that becomes a very easy method for gaining a foothold and getting logged in. And so the easiest way to log in, to get access, is just to log in. And that can be either through disclosed or guessing, carefully crafted. So that's kind of, we're seeing a lot of that, and it's really nasty. I just came from a meeting with a customer I had before. I was just telling people that was the topic of the day. That's their biggest concern that they're seeing. So Kyle, good.
Yeah, kind of as Randy said, the attackers will kind of do like a use of force to break into the environment. They'll start off with some of the basic stuff, like, do they have MFA enabled thoroughly? Are they using phishing resistant MFA? If it's the MFA coverage isn't thorough, if they're not using phishing resistant methods, then they can do things like, Randy was saying, brute force and social engineering, phishing to get those credentials, or even a man in the middle attack. But they're going to start off easy. So, you want to have those multiple layers of security in place to try to, eliminate some of the easier routes for, some of the attackers to get in. And then if, you do end up in a man in the middle situation using a tool like, Evil Jinx and getting some token theft, that's a pretty bad situation you want to be in. So having, a thorough list of controls and layers of security is definitely something we always recommend.
Hey, Kyle, quick question. You mentioned, I love this because we talk about MFA all the time and secure MFA. What's your definition, or what's the definition of phishing resistant MFA? Just to sort of expand on that, because that's like a different level of MFA, right? Or different controls, different methods.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people are most familiar with it in terms of using a security key, such as something like a YubiKey. Ultimately, you're getting a certificate involved. So when you go to sign in right now, in most cases, you're asked for your username, a password, and then you're authenticating through some sort of other second factor. It could be a text message, could be number matching, ideally. But with the phishing resistant MFA, it kind of takes the password out of the authentication sequence. So when you go to sign in, you're asked for your username, and then it asks you to plug in your security key into your USB port. Then it asks you to provide the PIN to the key, which is something and then it asks you to touch the key to just prove that you're present with it. So at no point are you asked for a password, and that's actually a huge benefit. Yeah, Randy's holding up one right now. It's kind of a little bit hard to see, but it's pretty small. And what's nice about it is, if you, through conditional access, which does require a little bit of extra licensing from Microsoft, Entra ID Premium 1, if you say the only way that you can sign into our environment is with a phishing resistant method, such as a security key, then in theory, the password is almost irrelevant, because it's not a valid way of signing into your environment. So if you had to go, talk to your cyber insurance, or if some attacker came up to you and said, like, hey, we got all your passwords, that's all well and good, but they can't actually be used to sign into the environment, because unless they have the key, the password's not going to be asked for. So it's not going to protect you from a man in the middle attack, but it is a really, great layer to protect you from just general credential theft.
Wow, that was quite a bit for the audience. And reflecting on what I just heard, the people attacking aren't teenagers hanging out in their parents' basement, are they? It sounds
not anymore. That was me when I was a kid, but no, not anymore. No,
And-
these are these are extortionists, right? These are people out to make money. These could be these could be people that want to cause some major damage to your reputation and brand because they don't like your company, they don't like what you support, what you stand for possibly, or it could be a nation state trying to get in, right? Maybe you have intellectual property they want, right? Or, a very VIP level person in there they're trying to get to get personal information from that, president, CEO, or whomever in that company that might have some, political gain for their sake, right? So that's what we're seeing. It's gotten a lot serious, Jeff, and that's why when you get on the phone with these customers, it's not a fun time. I'd rather do what Kyle does, right? Or Randy, and be more on the protect side, identify and protect side than the respond and recovery. But yeah, that's a really good question.
And I think
Yeah.
they vary too from what, there's definitely easier paths to get in where customers have not implemented some of the most basic security controls or have really, let's be honest, passwords are terrible. Until passwords are gone, like forget it. It just doesn't. People are going to continue to use horrible passwords.
Easy
Like
password, right.
that's a given.
Yep.
And so especially new users, this is another good method that is used is when a new person joins a company, people will typically use social media. And so, threat actors are aware of this, this is easily something that can be done. And you would be amazed at how many organizations still use very simple passwords, very welcoming passwords when an employee starts, so that their login is very simple.
Like welcome
And
1, 2, 3.
welcome 1, 2, 3. But oftentimes they make it really hard because you add an exclamation to the end,
Ooh.
and then then it becomes even more secure. It's not. And so those users become really good targets for phishing campaigns as well, and poor passwords. Like we continue to see that when we're doing like password spraying. It's amazing that the easily guessed passwords are still commonly used. And also the other, Kyle and I were talking about this too, oftentimes organizations have third-party vendors that are being used to support, whether it's infrastructure, applications, contractors, whatever it may be. Those users oftentimes do not have the same security controls that the rest of the employees have. And
Right.
so it's tend to make it really easy. And so sometimes those users don't have multi-factor authentication on their accounts. It's a common account, and that account may be disclosed on the dark web because it's been a shared account. The password maybe is not changed. You can see a series of what the password may have been previously. And so all these things are considered, but there's very, like I think Jay was saying, there's varying levels of sophistication for any of these attacks, going from something very simple like a brute forcing or password spraying to like Kyle was describing, the more advanced man-in-the-middle attacks, which defeat even multi-factor authentication.
Yeah.
And so it becomes really a challenge to protect against it.
I think one of the things you just mentioned, Randy, and I know we have a schedule here, but one of the things you mentioned was third parties, right? And it doesn't have to be you clicking on a link, right? It could be one of your partners that you do business with day in and day out who click on something. Their email box gets taken control of. They send you an email and try to phish you because they're now in their in the other person's email box, looking at the interactions they've had with you recently. They know what your language is, what you guys do, what your business is, and so they're going to entice you and create an email. And with things like ChatGPT now, it's easy to be able to create a convincing email, send it to you in the language that you typically communicate in, on the subjects that you typically communicate in, to entice you to click on a link and do something like change an account number, right? To send the latest payment to, or hey, do me a favor, send an Amazon gift card over to yada yada yada, right? This happens all the time, all day, every day, and customers, have to call, the FBI or local authority to try to see if they can reverse things, their local bank, and sometimes it doesn't work. It's too late, right? That ship has sailed. So it's a good point, Randy. It's not just you educating your employees to do this, but you have third parties now that you have to
You
be
have to worry.
very concerned.
And the yeah, I've even seen shipments being moved that, something was scheduled to be shipped one location and then moved and transferred, to a different
Yeah.
location. The other, even worse than that, I'll toss this over to Kyle because this is one of my this is horrifying,
Yeah.
which is when that business email compromise happens within your own organization, and then the threat actor has access to somebody's mailbox. And then, I don't know, Kyle, do you want to kind of walk us through what the dangers are and the risks of that? Because now you've got to, now you're communicating with your peers, right? That's
Yeah, I mean, kind of like to expand on what you were saying, when you have a mailbox compromise, whether it's internal or through like a partner, it's oftentimes that compromised mailbox is someone that's trusted to the organization. So, you don't think twice about it, like, oh, I talk to, Ted or Jane all the time, and so you're automatically your guard is down. When you're interacting with that person, especially if they are aware of some context in the email chain that can seem legit, you might not know you're dealing with an attacker, whether it's through email or IM or whatever. But on top of that, a lot of customers will not have thorough email protection in place, won't have thorough MFA, enabled. So, they might have whitelisting saying, if it comes from this person I talk to all the time, just allow that through. Don't let, our email protection, apply, because, we trust that person. Well, you're trusting, someone, but their mailbox could get broken into. And once it gets broken into, all sorts of nasty things can happen. We've seen instances where, mailbox is broken into, and that mailbox is used to send thousands of emails to thousands of organizations, to the point where Microsoft banned that entire company from sending
Right.
email. So we had to go in there and do, like, our whole, containment and eradication recovery, response, before we could get them unbanned. So that was highly disruptive, and not, including the damage of, what was done. In one case, the email that was sent out included a link to an internally hosted on an internally hosted OneDrive. So that way, when they click the link, the payload was internal, you could say. So we luckily were able to get the copy of the email, figure out that, the deliverable was on site, so we were able to stop sharing the link so anyone who did interact with the link, they only a subset of the people actually had a chance to interact with the malicious payload. So we kind of got lucky in that incident. But over and above that, I mean, emails can be forwarded, the whole mailbox via PSD can be captured. Like, Jay was saying, money can be stolen, all sorts of things. So once they're in, especially if they were to breach like a global admin account, any number of things can happen. You can just run a script, take thousands of actions in, the blink of an eye. So, it's critical to have several layers of controls in place to try to, minimize this. And, we like to look for silver bullets, like, everyone has MFA or even phishing resistant MFA, but really
That's
the
table
users are
stakes nowadays, man.
yeah,
This is
users
like
are still your weakest link in the chain. You gotta, clicking on links is something you don't want to do.
what's the best lure? What's the best, what do you, we've been chatting about this before. What's the best way to get a user to click on something?
They love free stuff. They sure do. Users love free stuff. So doing things like phishing simulations is absolutely huge, whether it's something that's canned and whether it's through Microsoft's tooling, attack simulator, or a product like KnowBe4, that's absolutely essential. And if you start to realize, okay, most of our users are not clicking this link, granted, it only takes one for a breach to happen. But if you're really confident that, they're doing a great job, I would consider going with a custom engagement, which, is something we do where, we can craft an email to your liking. We can call people, we can do any sorts of, we could do credential theft. We could do man-in-the-middle attacks to really simulate, what a business email compromise could look like. That could be wrapped around a tabletop exercise. It could inform an incident response plan creation. So we can do all sorts of good stuff, and really trying to do it preventatively is the way to go, because if you have to do it and reactively, it's far more stressful, far more expensive,
Absolutely.
because you have no idea what's taking place once a breach happens.
Yep.
Yeah, and when you start to really customize an email to an organization and to a user, and you start to do some research on the individuals that you're targeting, you can really start to, and anybody that's done the know before training, I think they do a really good job of describing how, what can actually happen. But it's really not that hard to actually pull something off like that. And when you think about the different ways in which you can do something like this, we were doing an engagement for a customer, and although we wanted to do this, but we couldn't get approval to do it, the customer had a welcome board, a TV that had their all their information, who was being welcomed to the day, and some information. We gained access to that board, and because it wasn't secured properly, and we wanted to put some phishing emails on there about, hey,
In this QR code.
yeah, hey, you're going to get a $100 Amazon gift card plus, welcome pack and blah, blah, blah. If you go in and do this to prove that, you've read this and, you've approved your training for the month. But it's amazing what you could actually get people to do. And even like Kyle was saying, if one of the first things we do if we get access to a user's credentials is to log into their online accounts. And so anything that we've got access to, and you log in, and then instantly, like Kyle was saying, the way communication is done today, you think about if somebody had control of your Teams or any other tool used for communication, and what you can persuade people to do that you work with, or even IT or security, and the massive amount of information that's stored in those accounts that people save. And so it becomes very easy now to gain access to that, and that's where everything is stored, which, I'll mention this because Kyle and I ran into this. Kyle, what we often run into customers that have configured their conditional access to allow for easy login when users are in certain locations. Any thoughts on that and allowing MFA bypass for?
Then I think we have to go to a poll question soon.
Great. So
Keep us on track, Jeff.
yeah, I'm doing my best. This is a great discussion. You guys, you know a lot, and you're right there on the front line. So again, valuable insights for folks on the call today. But yes, let's go ahead with the first question and see if we can get a pulse on what's going out there.
So according to the Verizon 2024 report, what percentage of security incidents are attributable to human error?
You didn't have my answer.
Just don't
Don't tell them what mine.
Don't tell
Yeah, it's just my opinion.
I would say Randy's opinion holds a lot of weight, though. So
I agree.
And I think
I just don't want him to tell the the end of the movie,
All right. So answers from our audience are in, and here's where we are.
Let's see. All right. Well, we have 88%. Yeah, more than 90%. 88 of you, or 7 of 80 of you did that. And yeah, 13%, nearly 70. The correct answer is nearly 70. Yeah.
So
Excellent.
Kyle, just like you were saying, very much, humans are the weakest link in the chain at this time. Clearly the data supports that.
Yep.
All right, cool. Let's change it up a little bit here in the next section. And Jay, you had this organization for us here at Blue Mantis, and so maybe this one's good for you. But you see business email compromise, you see various other flavors of security incidents. roughly order of magnitude, how many of the incidents that we've been called in essentially to remediate and get the customer live again, about how many of those are you seeing as business email compromise related?
Oh, good question. We've had quite a few this year. I would have to say 60 to 65% of all the, security, we'll call them security matters until we really understand what it is, but the security incidents, 65% are business email compromise. And it's on the rise, especially this year. Last year, it was more ransomware. We saw a ton of ransomware last year, right? A ton of customers getting hit with, something that encrypted their whole environment. It's changing up a little bit. We're seeing more and more wiper attacks where they're coming into the organization, just wiping all their data, including their backups, and just leaving them nuked for nothing, right? Not even, trying to ransom or ask for money, right? It's just, hey, we're going to come in here and trash you because we didn't like what you said in the news, or we don't like your organization, what you stand for. And then towards the end of last year, we got like three business email compromise in a row. We had a couple of more ransomware issues. And then the last, I would say 4 or 5 have been just all business email compromise, right, Kyle? I mean, poor Kyle's burning the midnight oil, over the holiday weekend, the recent holiday we just had, on a couple of those, a couple the week before. So, it's all day, every day, Jeff, right? And there's, we'll get into this, but there's certain things you can do, like phishing resistant MFA, to harden your environments to make sure that this can't happen. In addition to, and I think Kyle, you mentioned it, user training. User training is huge, right? Phishing simulations, you'll want to do that. You'll want to make sure that you're correcting the behavior of the folks, right? Make it fun, right? Turn it into a competition with your organization, and the teams or the departments that, win and don't click on the email. Maybe they get, Uber Eats. Everybody gets a gift certificate to Uber Eats. Like, make it fun for a little while, but eventually that person who keeps clicking on that link over and over again, you have to have that honest conversation and figure out, is this a risk to our company, having this person here? And it gets to that point, right? Because it is a risk to your organization. Make no mistake, it is a risk, right? So this is serious business. So does anybody else want to kind of answer that? I know you've been on a lot of these, Kyle, with me.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about some controls. We talked about security and awareness training, the importance of that, doing simulations and whatnot. But ultimately, security, it's a journey, as we know. There's a lot of layers you rely on. So even if you do training up and down, are really thorough in it. Again, it only takes one user to click on a link. So once that happens, you're really at the mercy of some of your other controls. So you want things like you want phishing resistant MFA, and ideally applied for all users in the environment. We see a lot of cases where, like Randy was saying, there's exemptions saying if you come from on premises, if you come from a trusted location, don't do MFA. That's not a best practice. You really want all users doing MFA, from any location. That would be huge. But again, ramping up that kind of use of force that attackers can use and getting to man in the middle. I mean, once that happens, it's almost game over. But additionally, you can do things like having email protection in place. That's huge. So that way, if you do click on a link, hopefully you have your detonation technologies kind of having your back. You could do web content filtering. That way, if it loads up a URL that doesn't get that does bypass your email protection, you have some protection there. Things like email rate limiting, in case like your account does get breached and they're trying to send out, if they're going to send out like 4,000 emails or so, if you say like our business on any given day, we're not sending more than like 100, external emails per person, maybe not more than 20 per hour, you can set these rates. And that way, if these rates are exceeded, that user can be prevented from sending email for the day for 24 hours or until you unban them. So you basically really lower the impact of, a bunch of these malicious emails going out. And again, because you're that trusted contact for your customers, for your vendors, it's going to increase the likelihood that, the attack persists across different organizations. So trying to get ahead of that saves a lot of people a lot of headaches. And Microsoft does have a feature called token protection in preview right now to try to protect against this man in the middle session token theft, but it doesn't really support all applications yet. Typically, when you apply an MFA policy, you want it to apply to all users. Again, not really focus on users and groups, because that's, there's human error there. You could forget to add users to a group when you don't have full coverage. And you also want to target all apps. So you're basically saying any user in the environment accessing any app, they need to do MFA, and ideally phishing resistant MFA. So token protection should help, but it's in preview and it's not fully rolled out yet.
There's licensing with
Licensing
admins.
too, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And maybe if I'm gonna, I'm trying to. Kyle's mentioned the man in the middle attacks a few times, and this is a more advanced and one we're seeing used more now, and that effectively is using that that phishing link that you get to get a user to click on a link. And what ends up happening is the threat actor, or like us, we use it for engagements with clients as well, is to intercept that. And when you intercept that request, you're going to front end Microsoft and essentially proxy that connection. And what that ends up doing is, to the user, it looks and feels, because it is just like you're logging into the Microsoft tenant, just like you normally would. And so the gap is, user clicked on a link that is hosted by the threat actor, and that steals the user ID, the password in plain text, and then also the session token for that session, was like a kind of like a cookie. So that's your security, like your security key. And you can then take that and bring that to any browser of your choice and inject that, and without any prompt for login or MFA, become that user. And it's a pretty interesting attack, because it sort of bypasses all security. The interesting thing that Kyle and I have been digging into this too, is that that there is no login. So when you're looking in the logs, the behavior around this particular attack is very difficult to, I guess, it's more difficult to detect. I'll let Kyle talk to that, but there's, and we've even demonstrated it coming off of some very suspect environments in different countries. And even when you had the risky behavior turned on, just bypasses all that. So it's a very interesting attack, and really dangerous.
Yeah.
But Kyle, maybe you could just quickly hit on a couple of the things that potentially you could look for when this does happen, beyond pulling somebody like yourself in to go through the logs.
Sure. Yeah. Like what we've seen and even simulated, in our own test environments, is you'll see that initial valid sign-in from the user, from their home location, from their device, but then the attacker steals that cookie, that token, and then they resume the session. So it's not like a new sign-in from somewhere else in the world that would cause alarm bells, to ring. So it's really hard to detect. You're really at that point just detecting strange traffic in the environment. Like, why is this person trying to access all these SharePoint links, or trying to forward or download all these emails? You're at that point, you're being impacted, and it's kind of too late in a lot of cases. So once we do suspect business email compromise, we immediately run to a handful of things right away. We try to do a global password reset. We try to do an MFA method reset, because the attacker will try to register their own authenticator on the user's account, because they immediately,
yeah,
they already have the password, as Randy said, so they can just get persistent access that way. So we try to kick out their authenticators. We try to do a revocation of the tokens, but that can take up to an hour to kick in. We try to do an internal email recall of the phishing email that got sent, because it's not usually sent to just one person in the org, but many. So we try to minimize that impact. And then we try to just do hunting and try to see what happened with that account. But that can be hampered by licensing. If you have Entra ID free, you're only limited to 7 days of logging So it overwrites. So if they've had persistent access for weeks or months or, whatever, you're not seeing that. So at best you can tell the customer, this is what happened over the last 7 days, but we have no further insight. And it could even be limited based off licensing, what kind of actions were recorded in the audit logs. So having proper licensing is huge.
What's the recommendation there, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a small business, less than, up to 300 people business, you really can't go wrong with business premium. That's a great bang for your buck for security and features. If you're bigger than 300 people, typically I've seen E3 and E5 security add-on from Microsoft 365. And then if, budget's not an option, or budget, you could spend anything you want. I mean, the Microsoft 365 E5 is the top license there. And typically we try to say, for all of your high value targets, you should have the best license, with the most security features. And that would be a high value target is typically defined as someone in leadership, a C-suite person, someone in IT, accounting, payroll, HR, basically someone with
Accounts payable, anybody can pay
payable,
money.
yeah. Someone with very sensitive access to the system or access to very sensitive data would all be high value targets. And you really want to have the most security in place for them at the very least. So you try to prevent some of these attacks, or at least when you're responding, you have the tools and, logs at your disposal to try to respond quickly. And one of the other things we like to see is a single identity provider like, Entra, and then a single MFA solution like through Microsoft. That way, when we're responding, we don't have to go over to all these different identity platforms and all these different MFA tools and correlate logs. That really slows things down. So
Something like a Duo, I've seen it. And the other thing to add on there, Kyle, is, get your logs off those systems, right? Get them into a central logging repository or a SIM or an MDR solution. Come see us, right? And talk to us about those solutions. Bad actors, that you just heard Kyle say the 7 days, right? If you have to go back 3 to 4 to 5 months to see how long the bad actor's been in there, those logs are gone, right, baby? You're not doing any forensics. You're not understanding how they got in, who was the first, patient zero kind of thing.
How much data was exfiltrated and when,
Yeah, right. So good idea to pull those logs off. Hey, Jeff, do we have another poll question or?
We do. So let's move to the next poll question here.
Yeah, this was the automotive company, right?
Mhm.
Supplier. Yep. TDK.
Yeah, again, it's good to kind of frame a reference. We've sort of talked about, impact to the business and normal operations and stuff, but there is a whole financial side. And after we get through this, I want to tee up a question, obviously without disclosing client names, but I got one for you here.
Okay.
Jay, how long does it take to, what's the typical recovery? How long does it take to get back? Hopefully that wasn't Jeff's question.
Is that the question, Jeff?
Yeah, hey.
I didn't know that. Sorry.
Let's wait till the poll's over.
Well, hearing the impact, right? I mean, first thing that goes to my mind, given the market that we serve, did anybody go out of business as a result of this?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah, there was 2 situations, one last year and two last year, actually. One, we came in and we did a forensics analysis on a particular environment that was experiencing some availability issues, and we uncovered that there was some older equipment in their legacy equipment, and that there was suspicious activity. We put in front of them a bunch of things to do to remediate the problem. They dragged their feet several months, then got hit with ransomware. They filed for bankruptcy shortly after that, and then shortly at the beginning of this year, 2024, the class action lawsuits started coming. So they're pretty close to closing down their doors. And then the other big one last year, they were out for a good 2 months, down, and multi-million-dollar recovery. They spent to recover. One, paying the bad actor ransom to get their data back, to get the decryption key, and then a lot more millions of dollars for the attorneys, right? And to recreate and rebuild their environment from scratch and, to pay obviously the ransom. No, I think it was upwards of $10 million at the time I was last tracking this. This was about 3 to 4 months after the attack. And no, they were down for a good couple of months. I don't know if they've ever recovered. There's another one that's just teetering on probably going out of business, if they're not out of business already. So those are two examples. And then some of them where we're really quick to respond, like Kyle and Randy and I have jumped on recently, Pete Harris as well, who runs our incident response team. One, we wrapped it up in before midnight. We got a call about 4:30 p.m. We got in there. Kyle came in, did a great job. We removed the bad email. We reset the password, just like the script that Kyle just walked you through. We did all that. We reset. Then you have to go in like, all right, now let's get the MFA installed, and that may take a little while. To get your reputation back from Microsoft may take a day or two, but they were back up and running and sending emails by the weekend, and that happened Wednesday night. And it was bad. That was a bad one.
And then there's typically, I know usually after these, because Kyle is usually busy doing remediation for an extended period of time, which usually, I don't know, Kyle, what the normal, that's usually, I think you hit on all the big ones pretty quick, but then a couple of weeks for remediation, which usually happens is
to really harden the environment, maybe.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, well, let's take a look at these results here. $100,000 per hour of downtime. That is staggering.
Yeah, that's huge. Even 50,000, and I could see why people even went 10,000, right? Those, it's big staggering. $100,000 per hour of downtime. Crazy. Yeah. All right, what do we got next there, Jeff?
Yeah, let's change it up. So, we understand the bad actors are out there. Y'all imparted some divine wisdom on some of the techniques we use to protect, but proactively, like how do I drive awareness for this if I'm not being heard in my organization? What can I do? What can I do to put myself in a better spot tomorrow than I find myself today? What do you guys say?
A really good question. Randy, you want to tackle that one first?
Yeah, I always promote, Kyle's got this great, Kyle's got this great assessment that he does that hits on the Enter ID and the M365 environment. It's pretty quick, and that's why it's a huge value in doing that. And the nice thing,
money too, right?
Yeah, it absolutely. And the compelling thing is that report is very easy to consume and present to leadership to say, hey, we need to invest some money to fix all this. And so getting some hard evidence that, hey, we're not following all the best practices, I think is super compelling, super easy to promote and to get immediate visibility into what's going on. And so it's directly actionable. It's following, a bunch of the standard frameworks that we use, but that's probably one of my big ones to be proactive for clients really to get on that.
And if you don't have the the skill set to be able to take the results of that and actually harden your environment, we're there for you. It's not a thud document we leave. We'll come in and actually help you through that. And if the price is nominal, it really is. And if organizations can't look at that, assessment and buy off on that, maybe they're not really serious about cybersecurity. But it's funny, it's human behavior, right? You could talk to you blue in the face if you're an admin, right? We need security, or a security person in an organization. You get the third party to come in, some quote unquote expert, and they say the same thing you've been saying for months. All of a sudden it's a serious issue, right? So just human nature.
But there's also a different, I find too, that you come into it as that third party, the outside individual, is that you've got a completely different look on things too. And so there's tremendous value in coming in and seeing, I guess you know, when people tell us like, you look at the world through a different lens, and it's like, yeah, that's our job, is that, you know, for our team, like we get paid to, you know, legalize breaking and entering.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we're paid to do that. So we think, you know, you often think differently. And so your approach when you're going in to look at an environment, you look at things that are easily passed over. It's like, you know, when you say, hey, I'm having trouble with something, can you take a look at it? And fresh eyes going to like, and you figure it out in like 2 minutes, and you're like, how did I miss that? I've been staring at that for 2 days. And so you often see some of those things too. And we see a lot of it, right? I guess, you know, maybe Kyle, you can provide some context around that too.
Yeah, I mean, it's starting with the assessment is huge. Like you have to kind of do a discovery and assess where you're at. If you know that you haven't done any hardening, you could also jump right into the hardening as well. In fact, with the assessment, we do give you, as part of our deliverable, a remediation companion. Like we encourage you to immediately start remediation and give you a little tracker to help guide you through that. But we do this all the time, you know, for various different clients, various in different sectors, sizes, and all that. And you know, so we kind of know how to do the hardening and remediation in a way that will not be super impactful to your environment. And we try to, it's prioritized, so we try to make sure your MFA is, you know, securely implemented like right off the rip, and then kind of go down the security stack and look into things even like data classification, retention, and DLP, just to say if you know you can't avoid a business email compromise, if it's a matter of, you know, a when and not if, then, you know, do you really need the last 20 years of data in your environment? You know, maybe you can get some of that off of
Very good point.
out of there. You know, we've had one customer who they delete all emails older than a year, full stop. So while that's not uncommon, or not while that's not common, it is something you can do. So yeah, I mean, you know, assessments, again, it's designed so that we kind of get into your environment, come back with a report. We only need about an hour of your time to present it. It's designed to be low impact because we know everyone's very busy trying to keep these attackers at bay and keep the users moving.
Couple other tools too, you know, just you know, you want a good email URL filtering system, something like a Mimecast, you know, Barracuda, you know, email security, things of that nature. Proofpoint is another one, right? And like Kyle said, the MFA piece, phishing resistant MFA, good social awareness programs, good hygiene, you know, around, you know, cleaning up your email, retention policies, data classification policies, DLP, right? We could go on and on. A lot of these are Microsoft has as well, depending on your licensing. So we'll look for those tools.
Passphrases versus passwords, adopt good you know,
Password
passphrase
manager.
hygiene. Yeah.
Yeah, like 1Password or Bitwarden or something like that, Randy. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Good one.
And one of the things that's coming out, you know, in emerging technology is Microsoft Security Copilot that sits on top of a SIM, like Jay was talking about earlier. So basically, it's kind of like a stack that builds. So you have all of your signals, all of your technologies, you have your endpoint protection, your email protection, your firewall logs. All of that is ingested into a single log repository. Alerts and incidents are generated, and via, you know, a Microsoft Sentinel SIM source solution, for example, you could take some automated responses, such as, you know, if a user is part of an incident, immediately reset their password or disable their account without before you're even aware of what's happening. You can do stuff like that. But then Sentinel Security Copilot sits on top of that, and you can interact with it. Like an analyst could talk to Copilot and say, hey, what's active in the environment? What do you recommend? And it's a lot easier than having to spend all this time writing tons of queries to try to get that answer. It can really shorten the amount of time it takes to kind of get into a environment and try to assess the situation, and it really improves the response time.
Yeah, excellent. Great point, Kyle. Yeah.
All right. So it's time for our next poll question. And so I'd ask that we bring that up. Great.
Microsoft
Yeah.
Incident Response observed this percentage of customers thwarted ransomware attacks use some form of multi-factor authentication. All right, let's see. Just under 80% and 100% and 5%, all neck and neck. See who's going to win out? Anyone else want to answer that? Break the stalemate? There we go.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see.
Oh, we got another one. Looks like 80%'s pulling ahead.
Mhm.
Just under 80. Yep, that was the right one.
Wow.
Bingo.
Wow. That's wild. So, by implementing an MFA solution, 80% of the attacks were thwarted. Am I reading that right? Wow.
That's what we're hearing.
Yeah, it's kind of a low-hanging fruit situation. So you have, MFA enabled to try to protect against, brute force, social engineering, phishing. But, if all of those are in place, the attacker can ramp up and move to man in the middle, and then you can still get, breached. But it's still a critical layer. It's not a silver bullet, but having MFA thoroughly implemented with phishing resistant MFA it's still super important. But it's only a layer.
Yeah, and one of the things, we go into cybersecurity assessments and like something like a NIST CSF assessment. We ask questions to customers about, do you have multi-factor authentication deployed? It's always like, yep, we're all set there. Yep, But when you start asking the questions like, well, where do you have it deployed? Well, on our VPN. Okay, where else? Okay. Oh, our Microsoft environment. All right. Where else? Right. Keep asking those questions. Right. And Kyle said, you want my MFA everywhere, the best you can. Right. Sometimes it's not feasible, but as much as you can. And Randy said it at the top of the game. Right. At the top of the hour, the bad actors take the least path of resistance. If they can find an easy way in, that's it. If you can thwart them a couple of times, they're probably going to move on because there's easier fish to catch.
Excellent. All right. Well, as we're wrapping up here, we only have a few minutes left. And so again, if you can just kind of bring it all home for me, right? We need to harden these. How are we going to do it? If fraud does ensue, how do I engage? And if I want to learn more, or perhaps I am embarrassed by my lack of attention to this previously, how can I engage with a firm to help make me better than I am today?
Yeah, give Blue Mantis a call. We've seen it all. I guarantee you it's not the word, if you come and tell us your dirty little secrets, we won't blab it all over the place. Your information is confidential, and I guarantee you we've seen, all four of us have seen worse. So come and we can help you get started on that journey. We typically, and I think we all talked about this, we'd like to start with an assessment, right? And try to understand where those holes are and gaps based on your your compliance and regulatory landscape, your budget, budgets are very important, your risk tolerance in your organization, and what applications and systems and people and, that you're trying to protect, right? All those things play in. And we can put the right assessment together for you and do that gap analysis and a risk score, help you present that back up to your executive leadership. And then we move into the modernization phase of that, where, smart people like Kyle come in and help, lock that front and back door, especially around the Microsoft 365 environment. But, AWS, Azure, and on-prem, all that's in play here with what we provide. It could mean technology upgrades, right, to harden the environment. We've talked about some of those technologies today. It could be maybe moving into a managed service. Maybe you don't have skills to watch this 24/7. We have managed services, security operations, and managed security services that we can provide to be those eyes and ears 24/7 for you and your team, and interpret those false positives or real events for you and with you, and then get right in there with you if an incident does happen, right? We have a full incident response team that can help. We also have people we can call to help support if you need legal counsel, and help when the situation happens, which I hope it doesn't, but we're here to support. Does that help there, Jeff? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, just to expand on that real quick. security is a journey, of course. So, with the Microsoft cloud and all these other clouds changing rapidly, the benchmarks and standards we rely upon, they're trying to keep up, but they're only updating roughly every 6 months. So we recommend that you do these security assessments and then remediation off of that, annually, just to make sure that you're always dialed in as much as you can to, the latest security guidance out there. So you're not too far behind. So, we like to see these, again, this type of work done annually, not like a one and done situation, because the cloud's always evolving.
Hey,
It
we have a couple
changes
of
so
questions,
rapidly.
Jeff.
Oh, okay.
You
Great.
want to read those? I think the first one might be for Randy or Kyle.
All right, so I'll call it out right here. Is default Windows Hello and Entra ID with M365 good enough for passwordless MFA logins, or is it required to add YubiKey or biometric hardware?
I can take that. So phishing resistant MFA is really defined as, it's a certificate-based method. So it could be Windows Hello for Business. It could be a security key. Basically you got to have some sort of certificate involved. So if that method qualifies as one of the three supported methods, then sure, that there's no problem with that. I want to say one is better than the other. It's got to be considered phishing resistant. And then you can use that with conditional access to say, these users, these applications, whatever, need that method to sign in. So as long as it meets that bar, then yeah, pick any of the three.
Keep in mind, you can have mobile devices as well that you're gonna have to deal with, and the most convenient for the mobile devices is something with near field capabilities as well. So
Okay.
Yeah,
Excellent.
the YubiKey NFC right there.
there you go.
Yeah, typically organizations will jump to the YubiKey. It's just the easiest thing to roll out. Whether it's that brand or another brand, they start off around 20 or so bucks, and it's a pretty quick way to roll out phishing resistant MFA, especially for those high value targets.
High value targets, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me get to the next question. You think we can get there?
Yep. So the 100,000K per hour cost of downtime is scary, totally scary, terrifying. But our CFO complains about high upfront costs of M365 E5 and Defender hurting the bottom line. How do I explain it better to the finance team?
Oh, I have a quick answer. And this is what we did internally at Blue Mantis. We invited our CFO to our tabletop test. Remember, Randy?
I do remember. Yes.
The CFO called our CISO, Jay Pasteris, and said, "Oh my God, I get it. What do you need?"
Wow.
And he called me after and said, "Hey, I want to let you know that you scared the crap out of me."
Yeah, those tabletops are, Kyle mentioned those earlier. We talk about that all the time with the customers during engagements. They're so beneficial to get drag everybody through it. It's not always pleasant, but it's eye-opening. Like Jay said, invite your senior executive leadership team to a tabletop is a great way to expose them and put them in the hot seat as well as participating during the engagement and to go through this it's absolutely when you talk about the assets of the organization and protecting your brand, this becomes paramount for organizations today, having to deal with paying a threat actor to prevent the leakage of your sensitive data is not a conversation anybody wants to have, including your CFO.
Yeah. I mean, recent case was we had an organization who was defrauded of well over $160,000. This just happened a few weeks ago. I mean, we have more and more that was even more money, but that should be enough. Make your scenario like that, where somebody clicks on a link and they either take over an account and convince somebody to change a shipping address or modify an account number. And then that money gets sent to the wrong place. That's a scary scenario, man. Money gone.
Call Jay and set up a meeting. Have Jay talk, or invite one of us. We'll tell scary stories.
One of the things I like to say is, with cyber insurance getting harder and harder to get, and it getting harder for CISOs to join an organization, considering some of them are going to jail now, because they're legally liable in a lot of cases. There's a lot of justification now more than ever to implement security proactively, because again, CISOs,
That's a good point. They're
they
up
won't,
against regulatory issues too now, and they
yeah.
are being held accountable. Wow. Yeah, good one. Good one, Kyle.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for being here today and sharing clearly your expertise and experience with this in the wild. Hopefully the folks in attendance have gotten a lot from today's session. And as a thank you for attending, Blue Mantis is offering a 10% discount on our critical security control assessment, as was brought up today. The comprehensive evaluation of your M365 security posture will help you identify and prioritize the most critical security gaps. It's a week-long engagement, and our cybersecurity experts, some of which may be on the panel this morning, will provide you with the actionable recommendations to improve your security and resilience. And I hope we can all stay classy out there, folks. I hope you have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.